The Franchise Growth Show. I'm Joe Carter. Today we are talking about something that most founders get wrong from the start. They enter crowded markets and try to compete on the same model, with the same pricing, same service, same positioning, and then they start to wonder why they can't scale. It's because there's no real differentiation, because that's where the real leverage lies. Revenue is a byproduct, but value is ultimately the objective. And value is created when your model is clear, repeatable, and enough differentiation to scale. Today, I'm joined by Daniel McCarty, founder of JunkStart. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Excited to be here.
I love it. Let's jump right into it. Start us off with kind of the origin story, the foundation. Give us a quick overview of JunkStart and how the concept came together.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks, Joe. The thing about JunkStart is we are the first and only pay-by-weight junk removal franchise in the country. And so I got started years ago with the idea that I was going to do junk removal, and I was going to do it just like everyone else, right? And traditionally, everyone in junk removal prices roughly based off of volume, but it's how much room your items take up in your truck. So I thought, hey, a little nicer branding. I'll answer the phone. I'll do all these things. Like, that's all you need to succeed, right? I'll just copy what works. But other people are making money. Like, there's room for me as well. And so we launched kind of with that thesis of the same as everyone else, just hopefully a little better. And it took me a couple years of kind of going through the suck, so to speak. Had the exact same value prop as every other company. Just a lot of that normal entrepreneurial journey of understanding like how important differentiation is. At least that was my experience. And so a couple of years in led to us pivoting into finding, our way with, hey, it's a much fairer model since we're charged by weight at the landfill. If we could turn around and put scales on our trucks, try and figure that out and end up just charging by weight. And so we became the first and only pay by weight junk removal brand in the country, or scaling it nationally now. And it's been kind of fun to see life before the pivot and life after, and just how important kind of differentiation is. So excited to talk to you, Joe, about that today.
I love that. Pretty clear offer with some clear pricing differentiation and obviously some clear execution with some nationwide scale. So I love it. What made your approach to junk removal different from the start?
Yeah, great. So when I started, which is fun, I had the exact same approach as everyone else. So I got to go in and customers would call in for a price and I would say, hey, it's based off how much room your items take up in our truck, which is so nebulous because how big's your truck? How well do you stack it? And the whole inside baseball is we would send 22-year-olds to our customers' houses. They would look around and they'd go, oh, yes, Miss Jones, that's going to be like half a truck. Just give me like $600. And it was like, sometimes Miss Jones told you to get lost because she was shocked. Sometimes, she goes, well, will you do it for $200? And basically our whole model was predicated on free on-site estimates and then having to do on-site sales training with your guys, quoting and then closing jobs, getting rebuttals. And basically I started to sense it was pretty unfair for the consumer. Because, a lot of what you were quoted was based off of what my 22-year-old, what he had for lunch, what his girlfriend told him the night before. Like, it was kind of all over the place, even if it's roughly based off of volume. And so anyway, the insight came to me was, hey, we're charged by weight at the landfill. Why don't we try and figure out a way to make pricing less arbitrary? It's kind of like the deli counter in a grocery store. You don't walk up there and ask for ground beef and he looks you up and down and just goes like, yeah, give me $50. Like, it's $9.99 a pound and it's super straightforward. And if you want 2 pounds, right, you understand the pricing mechanism. And anyway, that was sort of what we decided to do at JunkStart. Is it took many months and a lot of R&D. We figured out how to put scales into each one of our trucks. And it's been a much better value prop for us. And our customers have got a ton out of it. Our conversion rates are much, much higher. Our reviews are way higher, like our cancellation rates down. Our customers are loving it. We're loving it as business owners. And it's just...
That's fantastic. Most of the founders that I talk to, they just try to go like compete better or outwork their competition. But the ones who scale efficiently are the ones that just look for a way to compete completely differently than the competition. And that's obviously what you and your team have done. Junk removal, super familiar with it. I've moved more times than I care to admit, but it's a pretty competitive space. Where is it that most companies look the same? And I think as a result, we'll be able to see where you really differentiate as a result.
Yeah, it's important. I think so many of us, if you're listening to this and you're thinking about starting a business or buying a business or franchise, like some of the talk on the internet, Joe, I don't know if you hear this, but it's like, hey, it's so easy in home or commercial services. All you have to do is answer the phone, like don't recreate the wheel. Anyway, that's kind of how I thought about it too. And then when I got in it though, I realized like, hey, especially if you want to scale, like there's not just leads falling out of the sky and all you have to do is answer the phone and like be professional looking, right? It's like really hard consistently to generate demand. What is your core offer? How is it different than everyone else? Like, how do you drive enough leads, book it, Anyway, it's just hard. And so I think for most folks, like, hey, we're locally owned, or hey, our culture is great. I love that as a value prop. I think it is a key thing for you as a business owner to figure that out. But customers don't care if you're like locally owned, really. Like that is not news to them. Well, I should say it's not like revelatory when they're listening, like, oh, it's not a great differentiator. And so I think this was instructive for us as you can get differentiation a lot of different ways. I think we found it in a really weird place, like how we approach pricing, right? How do you package your product or service? How do you how you deliver your product or service? Like there's so many really interesting ways I think to differentiate that most of us, at least in like the local service business, don't usually use, right? It's like, oh, I'm a plumber. I'm always a plumber. I do what every other plumber does. But like, there's some really interesting ways I think, going forward that we all need to, as entrepreneurs, kind of look at is like, how can we create a more unique offering that resonates with folks? Because in the absence of differentiation, everyone's competing on price. If it's, I know that's cliche and you hear it in business school or business books, but like that has been my experience. It's like, if all of your websites look the exact same with the exact same pictures and like ultimately it's just a race to the bottom. And like you've got to figure out a way to where you can earn enough attention to where you can say like it's not just purely a race to the bottom on price. Like, hey, this is how we build value. This is how we do things. And I think it's super important. I'm sure you'd agree, Joe. Like just to get out of that pricing talk right up front, like, hey, this is how we do things. It's differently. And any local business owner like listening to this, I'm sure.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. When every brand looks exactly the same and markets exactly the same, the only thing left to differentiate them is price. And as a result, to your point, race to the bottom, that compresses margin, compresses profitability. So your capacity to differentiate really is what will separate you from everybody else. So how was it? Walk us through that process. How did you identify pay by weight pricing as the way that you wanted to differentiate?
Yeah, I was looking for a differentiator. So like this is, as often happens, like it could seem like, oh, out of the sky, but really, I mean, it was months and months, probably a year of like, I need to find a differentiator. If someone asks me how I'm different and I go my culture, like that's not a good enough answer. And so it came about, I was hiring a kid that used to work at one of the big competitors. And he told me this term called the grandma tax. And basically in the volume-based model, you get a free on-site estimate, you show up, say you quote $500. If Miss Jones is a really good negotiator and you already spent the money to get there and it's late in the week, maybe she says, hey, if you do it for $100, like I'll let you do it. Sometimes you'll take up because you'd rather have $100 than nothing. And the industry term, the grandma tax he was telling me is like, they're fine to do that because they know on the next job, it's usually a sweet little grandma. Instead of charging her, say $100 for a little bitty futon, they try and charge her $500 to make back their lost margin. And they called that, like that was the term, the grandma tax. And it just resonated with me because I was like, what a stupid thing for a business to do, right? You're like taking advantage of your customers. Like there's 100 reasons why it was dumb. It was really playing into my fatigue of, I hated having to train the guys of how to quote and being totally reliant on their pricing, to hit, what they were quoting to be my pricing. And the insight came because I had been in the waste industry my whole life. I actually own a landfill with my family. And I know, 40 years ago, we used to kind of quote by volume, but we ended up, everyone in the industry put scales down and we just charged by weight. And I was like, man, if we, kind of the idea was like, I think that would be a really cool differentiator if we could somehow charge by weight. And that way we're not doing volume out in the field, but we're just getting billed by the weight at the landfill. And so that idea kind of led to hey, let's think about this. Turned out like, trying to figure out how to put scales in all the trucks, and it led to a ton of R&D and effort, and I had to get rid of all of our trucks and buy all new ones and figure out how to do that. It's become kind of a patent pending scale system, which is great, right? Like the harder it is, the kind of more valuable it is ultimately. So I'm glad it, wasn't just an easy idea that we could execute on. It took a ton of resources to do, but that was sort of kind of what led to our pricing pivot. And I had thought that it would, it was better for the consumer, and I also thought it would give us a differentiator we need. And that turned out, thankfully, to be true.
I love that. That's a fantastic story, especially bringing in kind of the family dynamic there. That's great. You didn't just change pricing; you changed how a customer evaluates your service, and that's where real differentiation lives. I love that. How has that impacted customer trust and buying behavior, but through that change?
Yeah. It's impacted a lot. So like right now we've got close to 900 reviews here at our corporate store in San Antonio with a 5.0 average. And you're like, okay, well, like, it's pretty good. And so like what we found is our closing rates went up on the phone. We were able to build more value to book jobs onto the schedule. And then our cancellation rate, I guess I would say, went down as well, right? And that's what leads to higher conversion rates. But like we basically built more value on the phone. We were able to say, hey, have you used junk removal before? This is how we work. We used to do it the other way by volume. We found it was unfair. This is, and so basically customers were booking at a higher rate. They were staying on the schedule at a higher rate because I think we built more value. We showed up. It's no longer like throwing out a random estimate. We're able to give estimates over the phone based off of weight. And so like our on-site conversion rate basically went from, 2 in 10 would kind of tell us to get lost, to now basically we convert 100% of our jobs when we show up, because it's, we've given them a price estimate over the phone. We show up, it's not kind of like a winner take all, $500 or nothing. So anyway, it's turned into like our conversion rate has meaningfully improved. So the cost to acquire customers has come down because we have kind of an interesting differentiator. We're driving leads more efficiently, but also we're converting more of those leads to paying customers. And so it's been wonderful, I think, on that side to see, just the movements in customer, experience. Like I think if they didn't like it, right, we wouldn't be converting better. We wouldn't have a higher conversion rate. And then on the other side, it's like, because we have more consistent margins, I get to look at our P&L and I price it at whatever, 60 cents a pound. It's not based off of what the 22-year-old in the truck wants to charge for any given job. So we're actually able to, instead of making a killing on one job and getting killed on one job, we just have a steady gross margin now. We're actually making more money than we were as a volume-based company. So our pricing's better, our margins are better, our customers are happy. And normally, like, it's not like we're just giving them, rock bottom pricing and we're losing our behinds, right? Like we're actually making more money and we're building more value and our customers are happier. So it's kind of one of those weird, places in business where normally, right, like, pricing and conversion rate kind of are opposites. We were able to kind of get, charge more for our services and convert at a higher rate. And that's just based off the value we're able to build with this model.
That's fantastic. That conversion rate is phenomenal. And what I took away from that is you really dialed in transparent. Like it's exceptionally transparent in reference to pricing, which drives an improvement in loyalty. It reduces friction. Therefore, it's increasing your conversion rate and ultimately leading to trust. You said, it was 900 or something like that, reviews that you've had at 5-star level. So you're creating a huge amount of trust, and that's going to ultimately drive repeatability down the road as well. So that's fun.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we always at the end of the job are like, hey, you would have paid a lot more with the volume base. Like, I think you're really glad you chose us, which, in their head, right, they go on and tell their friends. And basically we're trying to remove the risk of getting screwed. So like, again, if I went and bought a used car, if I'm just a freak of nature at negotiating, maybe I love going in there and just scrapping it up with the guy, but I'd almost rather like assuredly pay, a fair price. And I know what it's going to be before I walk in there than just hoping I can negotiate a good price. Because maybe I win, maybe I lose. And that's the same thing with junk removal. Like, I just, here's it is, it's whatever, 60 cents a pound. Like, if it costs me a little more, it's just because it's going to cost them a little more because it's heavier. And if it costs less, it costs less for us. And we just kind of remove that risk of haggling and getting screwed. And I think customers love that. They hate to have some.
Yeah, nobody likes going on the used car lot. Like, that's one of the oldest cliches out there. So I agree with that 100%. Walk us through how the onboard truck scale system works operational.
Yeah, it was really important for us to figure out how to put them, right there on the truck to where we could show up. We zero out the scales. Customer can see like a live readout. Oh, it's at 0. We can hang on the side of it and kind of show the weight, the scale going up and down. We usually make like a funny joke, like, oh, that's a little higher than I thought. We go reaffirm the price estimate we get the customer over the phone. They can come out and see it go from, 0 to 255 to 515 pounds, right? They know the pricing. They know the rough weight range when we start. They also can, as we're going, they can add more if they'd like. They could say, hey, actually, they can add less if they want. If your budget's a little higher, a little lower, right? We could always, especially on the lower end, like we can just load the most important items as opposed to having to take all of it if you want to pay a little less. And so it's right there at the end of the job. Boom, it's 515 pounds. We print off a scale weigh receipt. Like we charge, whatever, the 500 pounds times a per pound price. And we call it like weigh it, pay it, done. Super easy. Go to the next job, which is the key part. We zero the scale back out, even if it's a quarter truck full. It starts at 0 again, right? And we'd load the same stuff and do it over and over again. So we're hoping to get 2, 3, 4, 5 jobs in the truck before we got to drive across town and go dispose. And so that's a big thing on site. They could see the scales, they could see the weight. It's super transparent. And that made a big deal because the other, volume-based companies like our competitors, if you go do a little quarter truck job, you go to the next house and then you're telling them it's based off truck space and they look back there and like half the truck's already full. And they're like, well, how do I know? That's kind of not fair. And it's true. It's like, it's hard to explain. It always was for us when we used to do that. It's like, well, don't worry about that. Like yours is only half a truck, even though it's already full. And it was just kind of weird. But now it's super easy to, we just zero it back out. It starts back at 0 again. It's made it super easy for the customers to understand. For our guys, they're not worried about, obviously trying to close jobs and price them and on-site sales. They're really just there to serve and to work the job. So that's been a huge impact just based off how our scales are set up.
That's fantastic. You've done the capacity to operationalize differentiation by doing that, and that's critical. That's what scales. No pun intended. There's a scale on the truck, but those are the ideas that scale. Creating those systems. So I love that. What were some of those challenges that you faced when you first started implementing this model?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously it's not being done right. So it was hard to figure out how to do all that, like different rules and licensing and regulations around it, practical engineering feats of how to put scales on trucks. And there was a ton that went into it. I know one of the stories, like I had a bunch of trucks that worked the old way. And once I decided to make the pivot to pay by weight, found out like those trucks wouldn't even work. So I had to sell all of our trucks, 3 years in at this huge like kind of depreciation curve, get rid of all those, take a loss, like go buy all new trucks that would work kind of for the intended purpose of now with the scales that are heavy. And there's just certain things that we need for the scales. And so like there's a lot to it, obviously, that's part of our secret sauce. But it was really fun getting to kind of go through that process and ultimately end up putting patent pending status around it all. And that was kind of my first foray into that side of the IP world, and that was super fun and interesting for me as a entrepreneur. It's fun. So yeah, it's been a really cool experience. I view all that R&D and tons of money spent and invested as like just a core moat that obviously keeps it from being everyone able to do it. So that's kind of how I.
And kudos on the patent pending thing. Having been there myself, that is a process in and of itself. And I know so many people where kind of the innovation stage is where everything breaks. So the fact that you got past kind of the innovation to the execution stage proved that not only was the idea great, but you could create great systems off of it. So fantastic. That system, you've talked about it a little bit, but I'd love if you wouldn't mind diving in a little bit further. How does that create the efficiency to improve routes or drive the margins like you referenced so that you can ultimately make more on a more consistent level? Like, can you break some of that down a little further for us?
For sure. I think the first thing on pricing, like pricing is your number one determinant of gross margin, right? right? So like said another way, like discounting is the number one killer of your gross margin. And basically the old model by volume based, because our 22-year-olds, I just picked that number. Anyway, our guys that aren't trained on how our QuickBooks look and our financials, and they didn't go to get their MBA to learn pricing mechanics. But they show up and if they quote 500 instead of 400, right? That's great for us. But if they quote 300 instead of 400, that doesn't sound like a lot to some people, but that's like basically a 30% discount on our services. There goes all of our margin plus like a good bit of, and so like we were just kind of all over the place. And I look at the end of the week and our average job size was X. And I'm like, well, why was it X? Are the actual jobs smaller? Are we just quoting poorly? Is that just, it was so hard to see, and our margins were all over the place. And so like the idea was, I was listening to some class about how stop discounting, like it literally kills your gross margin. And I was like, man, if we could set our pricing based off of, I can understand, look at our P&L, say, hey, based off these COGS, I need to be priced at whatever, 60 cents a pound. Like I can remove all the pricing decision out of the front line, keep it where it should be, kind of right, with people with visibility into the finances. And yeah, it just like rocked. Our gross margins went from like the mid 40s to like the upper high 60%, almost 70%. And that really is not because we're like gouging our customers. It was just because like half the jobs we were literally losing money, and half we were probably making too much money. And so that was a super cool, like systematic way to approach pricing that I don't know if I necessarily like fully embraced at the beginning, or I didn't know, I couldn't have foreseen all the benefits it's turned out to be. Another one is our truck beds are bigger, right? So like they're now approaching almost 20 cubic yards. 100 got junks are probably more like 12 or 13. And what happens is, because they're based off volume, it makes sense, kind of like your potato chips. Some shrinkflation has gone on. They'll never tell you that, but that's my opinion. The trucks are getting smaller and smaller because obviously they're charging by volume, and it makes sense. And so ours, we're going the other way. Since it's by weight, I want the trucks to be as big as humanly possible so I could fit as many jobs as I can, as much revenue into that truck before I have to go send two guys across town to go wait an hour at the landfill line, right? Like the more often I've got to leave customers and go drive over to dispose and come back, the worse my operating efficiency is. And so a lot of these guys in the volume world, like their trucks are getting smaller, I get it, but I think they're going to, like, I don't think it's going to bode well for them long-term on their operating efficiency. Whereas if we can get, just our core trucks are larger and larger to where we can do an extra half job or full job or job and a half before we have to go across town. I think that just, it's like this core operating efficiency that I'm super excited about as well for JunkStart.
Well, you've reduced negotiation, you've reduced inconsistency, you've reduced revenue leakage, margin leakage, and certainly kind of the route optimization aspect of it as well. You can do more jobs before you have to kind of lose the labor on the back end when you have to go drop off. So that's amazing. Well, obviously you're based in San Antonio, so Texas born and bred. What was kind of that early traction success that looked like in Texas? Because Texas is different than a lot of other states, though.
Yeah. We're here. Our corporate store's here in San Antonio. I was sort of born and raised here. Knew the industry well, just from the waste side. And so yeah, early traction in San Antonio was great. Like I said, it wasn't like we just opened the business and were immediate successes, right? Like it took years of, I would call it very middling success or lack thereof. And like without the differentiation, and like anyone listening, thinking through, or, if you're in business, you already know this, obviously. If you're thinking about it, you're going to know this, but like, it's not all up and to the right. And so like, I never would trade kind of those couple first years when we opened where we didn't see like the traction. I remember thinking we would scale to like hilarious numbers in hindsight, like the first second month, fourth month, sixth month, just because, I thought I was great. And it was so good to kind of get that much needed sense of humility, understand the business model more. Obviously the challenges, the rocks, the obstacles become sort of the breeding ground for the innovation to then, create value and find ways to do things differently. And I don't know if you felt this, Joe, like, I think sometimes as local kind of like service, small business owners, we don't read any of like the technology or startup books about like creating value and iterating and testing things. And we're kind of so focused on day-to-day execution that I really think a lot more folks in the service space would be better off, at least also like thinking through first principles of like, hey, like startup, like, what is a startup? Like, how do I create value? You got 100 things to do, so you can't obviously be focused on testing all sorts of things as a local plumber owner. But I think we do ourselves a lot of disservice by just assuming this is as good as it'll ever be. Let me just answer the phone and be real tactical on the execution without ever kind of, stepping back and zooming out and thinking like, hey, can we do this a little better? Can we create value a little better? I don't know if that resonates to you, Joe.
It absolutely does. That to me is the epicenter of the blue ocean strategy, where you create a whole new competitive marketplace that completely differentiates you from every other player that's out there. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. And the fact that you're doing it here in Texas, where there's some Texas pride that goes into local business and local entrepreneurship. So kudos to you as a fellow Texan, to you and your team for the success that you've had. It's been amazing. Certainly early traction sometimes is revenue, but more often than not is not about revenue. It's about creating some level of repeatability. And y'all have done just that. Once you made that switch and you started doing, by scale versus the old way, what were some of those early signals that told you, yeah, this model is going to work and I can hit the fast forward button on scale?
Yeah, I think the first thing was I'd run it by folks I liked, trusted. I didn't know just anyone that would listen, honestly. And I'd be like, here's how everyone else does it. Here's how we're charged. Here's what I want to do. And 99% of the time, people are like, I can't believe that's the way it hasn't always been done. Or like, that just makes sense. And like, you keep hearing that enough and enough, like sometimes that's enough validation for entrepreneurs to like, hey, like that's usually a pretty good sign if people are coming up with that. Because a lot of the big ideas are simple ideas, right? Like sometimes it's groundbreaking innovation and R&D and some new, I don't know, weird molecule you discover. But like a lot of times it's like some sort of new take on a very simple idea. And so that was sort of the first, I just kept hearing that feedback and I was like, okay, cool. This is good enough to go to stage 2. And stage 2 was sort of talking to our customers, heard the same experience from them, but also like seeing our conversion rate, cancellation rate, all that meaningfully improve. I thought, hey, that's another great points in the system. And then, when I first started, I didn't really know what to charge. I started with like, say, I don't know, 40 cents a pound. And then, a couple of weeks, then I go, that's not where I need it to be. I'm going to go to 50. And then, a couple of weeks later, I need to go to 60 cents a pound or whatever. And every time I raised pricing, we were also getting better at communicating it, but our conversion rate was going up and up and up as we were raising our pricing as well. So like, that was great for me to say like, hey, we really do have pricing power. It's not like as my pricing went up, my conversion rate dropped. It actually did the opposite. And I think that was another like, great, like that's a key insight for us. And then, the last one kind of that comes to mind was our commercial revenue. We started off, basically all of our business was homeowners, same with most people in junk removal. Now over half of our business is B2B, property managers, apartments, and they love the pay by weight sort of differentiator. And that was like a wonderful kind of added benefit, huge benefit that changed our business because, that's reoccurring work that you don't have to rely on Google all the time. But those were kind of the key steps in my head that were like, we started just stacking new apartments and I'm like, okay, like, all these things are coming together to really like, I've really checked off every list I needed to hit in order to really triple and quadruple that.
That's freaking fantastic. You took a basically 100% transactional business and flipped it to a 50-50 revenue recurring model. That, I'm not going to say unheard of. It's happened many times in business, but it is rare. It's rarefied air. So kudos to you. That's amazing. How have you had to refine that system? I know you mentioned a little bit, like you started at 40 cents, went to 50, went to 60, but what are maybe some of the other ways that you've had to refine that system before you really go forward with expansion?
Yeah, no, marketing's been like a never ending, obviously, pursuit of better. And so like understanding, all the different digital strategies and spend and what we do there. I think it really does, every marketer will tell you this, flow from a coherent brand strategy, brand archetype, like this is your differentiator, your copy, everything down to like your PPC strategy. And, like it all should be very coherent. But that's been a continual, evolvement to where, hey, now we can consistently generate this lead at this cost. Then the call center, which, we have developed and as part of our franchise system, like how do we book calls effectively, build value, closing rates got to be good. And then obviously operating, we've continually refined how we do things, like how we onboard, train, do things that way. B2B, we've certainly evolved as well. Like we now have like a great B2B system of how to like launch, go build your book of business, what to say to who, at what cadence, how do you get around gatekeepers, and then of course, like on the back end of that, a lot of these are on net terms, right? And so like getting in the apartment world, like there was a big learnings in how to properly bill and how to have a proper AR collection process, because if you let them, right, like they'll pay, you'll be 60 or 90 days out and they're like, who are you? And it's so like, that was a really fun, interesting system and process that we were continually dialing in, but getting our collection process in. Anyway, all these things, I view them as core capabilities. And I really view JunkStart as like a core capability kind of machine. Like, hey, we're really great at marketing, lead gen, inbound call center converting, B2B outbound, our back office, all these are capabilities. Every day we're building, and then we're using that and leveraging it to continue to grow the business and franchising or our corporate stores in the future. Like these are all just key fundamental core capabilities I view. And every day, how do we add stack chips and each one of these get better and better, more repeatable systems to where then we can create even more value in the future. That's kind of how I look at it.
I love it. And there's so many parallels to what you just said with some of the stuff that I've done in the past, having to pivot from a residential, strictly landscaping business to heavy B2B commercial, dealing with apartment complexes, HOA communities, where payment terms become especially efficient, and you got to improve your AR capabilities or you're just going to run your business into the ground. So been there, done that. We're speaking the same language in reference to some of the kind of those just learning curves of how or what do I need to get better to really scale effectively. So now you've kind of done those things. You figured out those systems. You figured out those gaps at least that need to be closed out. At what point did you decide that, hey, I want to franchise this model?
Yeah, well, I'm crazy, Joe. So I decided to franchise the model before I even created the model. I grew up in businesses, family businesses, super fortunate in the mining and materials. And anyway, so about 2020 and 21, we sold a couple of businesses and I was fortunate to participate and had some money. And I thought like, hey, maybe I'll buy a business. I looked around, probably what a lot of people are finding now. It's like, there's 100 bidders on every like mediocre kind of small business that's, trading at 3 times what it's worth probably. And so I decided I want to start something. Anyway, back into what's my favorite business model? What do I want to start? And I always love the idea of building like a world-class franchisor, just from an idea of like centrally building the model, decentralizing it and distributing it across the country, local owners, building their own businesses. And so I thought like, I started with that idea, and then, hey, I know the waste industry, junk removal has been done before. Let's do junk removal. Then I started JunkStart. And then it was kind of went through those couple of years of trying to copy everyone else, then finding that. And so anyway, it was very full circle to where like I was naive and thought, oh, I'll just immediately start franchising some model. And it really took many years of coming back full circle to where, hey, now we're differentiated. All the systems are, getting dialed in. Like now we have a much stronger foundation to then launch the franchising platform. But it's different than a lot of brands that kind of happen into franchising. There's pros and cons, but like this has been purpose built from the very beginning. So I've invested very differently than most owners in systems and strategy and IT and all of this. It's been, probably spent 100 times more than most people ever would dream of, like launching just the junk biz, but it's because it's all been with, the end in mind. I think we're in a really strong place. The vision from the very.
I love that. Begin with the end in mind. Shout out Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Couldn't agree more. Franchising, at least for the 17-ish years that I've been in this space, more often than not, only works when the system's proven, economics are clear, and execution is easily repeatable by someone else, somewhere else. And you have checked all of those boxes, my friend, so great job there. What had to be built or documented in that process before starting or selling your first franchise territory?
It's been fun since the beginning, obviously thinking through this. So like everything from constant iterations of, anywhere from the guys, like, trucks, how to build the trucks, how to operate maintenance plans, hiring, what are we looking for? How do we post, how are we phone screening, the whole who process, like getting people onboarded is super, it's not all that intuitive. Sometimes it is, but like we have, it's been years and years of refinement on, hey, we need to hire 4 guys. if you just post on Indeed and hope for the best, like you're going to get really sporadic oftentimes. So like, how we onboard people, what's the first 60 or 90 days look like? What's the, for your truck team development plan, like how do you keep them engaged? Like what's the next promotion step? Like we've gamified all of that to make sure that we're keeping, really great people over time. And marketing, like I said, has been continual evolvement of you can open and spend 20 grand a month on pay-per-click, right? And completely lose your shirt and light money literally on fire, right? So if you want to, or you can open up with no budget and, you may think that you're, being smart by not giving Google any money, but you're also going to run a business because you have no revenue. So like just proper marketing launch plans. We've got a great grand opening strategy now with the right vendors, the right spend, doing the right channels and super excited about that. And yeah, operationally, it's like a never ending, refinement of our 300 plus page operations manual. But, everything from, generating intent, awareness, phone call through, scheduling the jobs, showing up, performing great work, processing payment on the back end, and reinvesting, in the business in the right bucket. So like that's been, obviously franchising is all about systems, but yeah, we've been super intentional about, documenting everything and continually refining it as we improve it.
I love that. And how do you think about or define franchisee success? Like how do you look at a franchisee within your system and say, hey, that one's successful, this one maybe needs help?
Yeah, I think like from a philosophical perspective, which no one's asking, but like our core purpose is to help others like actualize their potential, maximize their contribution, and use their greatest gifts in service to others. So like to the extent we can help people join, from truck team members to the corporate store to franchise partners to their employees, like, and you're just kicking butt and you're doing the very best you can, like, and you're feeling filled up doing it, and like, we can help improve your capabilities over time to where you have even more to give. Like, I think that's a really great, like, that's the purpose of the brand. Obviously, in order to do that for the long term, we've got to have great unit economics. And so we've got different metrics that we need to hit, obviously, for someone in this system to make sure that the business is healthy, it's doing good. There's a vehicle for us to keep like progressing. Like if none of us are making money, like we could all be kumbaya and best friends, right? But we're going to drive right off the cliff, and we all have no vehicle for the change we want to see. And so like we kind of try and balance that. But each franchisee for us, like our goal is to be the largest junk removal franchise brand in the galaxy. And so like we want to be the largest in each individual market, right? Like I want, ultimately that's what I want for the brand. And so like we're trying to find like-minded entrepreneurs that also like, hey, I want to be the biggest in whatever, my part of Atlanta or Omaha or Nashville. And like, we're looking for folks that are aligned, vision, values, and with complementary skill sets. And so I would hate to have someone join our system and their only goal was to ever have one truck. And like, as much as, would love them and be like, I'm glad that maybe that is their capability. Great. And my job would be then to try and probably exit them from the system to find something that better fits that, because, it would be kind of in conflict with us. But ultimately, it's a combination of, I want each person in this brand to actualize their potential, but I also want the brand to actualize its potential. So, when those start to become in conflict, right, like we've got a kind of a framework to approach that. But ultimately, yeah, we've got to make money to create the vehicle to provide the service and the transformation we're looking for as a brand. And that was a lot, Joe. But yeah, I like talking about the cultural side of it for sure. But anyway, it lights me up.
That's a fantastic philosophy, truthfully. And at the end of the day, franchise success is system. It's about the operators being successful, but it's also about the brand being equally successful. It's got to work on both sides, or it's not a system. And it needs a system to be successful. So what are those systems that are ultimately critical as y'all really accelerate and look for consistency and growth nationwide, but also for galaxy? Maybe new systems will be necessary to go off of planet Earth, but we can hone in on planet Earth. Yeah. What are those systems that are needed today to maintain that consistency?
Yeah, I think like from a structural point, like especially with franchisees, it's like, how basically for us as franchisor, it's like, all right, what's our time to close between being introduced to a candidate to closing and making sure it's the right mutual fit? Then it's like, what's the time to open, right? Okay, great. There's a time to ramp to break even, right? Profitability. And then there's a time to sort of hit our revenue saturation numbers. There's sort of hey, I'll get maybe I'm doing, X per year. Okay, great. That's a great year one target. But like to be truly, saturated in your market, you're going to need to get to, 3X that, right? Or maybe to get really hair on fire, it's going to be 5X that. And so like, how do we shrink the time, obviously, to open to ramp fast, to get to kind of a base model of success, and then to get to like that outperformance model. And so like all of that relates to obviously like making the phone ring, obviously a marketing system and engine, and a B2B, sales system and engine. How are we effectively booking those customers, right? So like our in-house revenue center is super important in making sure that we have full funnel visibility between all the different data points, but like we got to get them on the schedule. And then we got to, do the jobs really well. Everything from the pre-call, how we set expectations with our truck team and delight them. None of it works or matters if we don't do a great job in the field, obviously, and then processing the money. So like those are the buckets and the systems I look for. And then appropriate scaling, right? So we've got, leads coming in, we're booking and we're doing jobs, and then we got to effectively staff, add trucks capacity when we need to, build the business methodically and systematically to where, you don't run out of cash, or, you're not taking on a massive, you don't need 15 trucks when 3 would do, right? And making sure we're scaling. But those are like the big buckets of scaling that I see for JunkStart.
I love that. And obviously when a new franchisee comes into the system, they got an awful lot to learn. So what does that process look like, that kind of that onboarding timeline for training and process play and the learning, role playing, whatever it may be, so that they can get to a place of execution and open?
Yeah, 100%. I feel like that's like the $1 million question, right? But we start with the sales process, obviously trying to set expectations appropriately, trying to, even in our FTD, using item 19 numbers that we use like here. So obviously like when you go through training, like we're not saying, hey, look at the apples over here, and then like, hey, look at this oranges over here. Like we're trying to do a lot of the pre-training as we're through the education process. Initial training, there's a bunch of checklists, like you're kind of drinking from a fire hose. We try and break that down to what's absolutely critical, most important, what could happen 90 days later, right? Like you don't need to do everything all at once. And then going into the big buckets, like our week-long training, like we actually have our first franchisee is coming in tonight for our week-long training, but like we're really focusing on what's the key 90, 80, 20, what's the key 80% you need to know, the core 20 that you need to know eventually, but not right now. Like we're going to put that on the back burner, obviously, and then do a lot of hands-on training and learning. I think most people, like I could sit for a week and teach you everything in a classroom, but like going out, seeing a job, talking to our corporate employees, like seeing how we hire, like seeing what's important to these guys on the truck, seeing what a job looks like, what a landfill looks like, what it looks like to get your, the door slammed in your face on a B2B account, like what it feels like to get a B2B account. Like we're gonna do a lot of hands-on, the core capabilities building, at least to let them see it at this training week. And so anyway, we're trying to phase it to where, like anything, the 80-20, simplify it, keep it simple, stupid. There's a million things as the expert, right? You want to tell everyone exactly how to do everything, and probably part of that's ego, to show how much you know. And that's such a huge, I'm sure everyone listening to this, it's such a huge detriment, right? If your training turns into word vomiting on how much you know, which is probably what, I don't know, this podcast is turning into, so I apologize. Basically, at least on my side, trying to find the right balance of information, and you don't need to try and splurt it all out.
I couldn't agree more. Being a trainer myself, it is not about what you say, it's about what they retain. So that's ultimately the metric that you have to look for. You have shared a ton about the junk removal space in the industry, how you guys have really decided to differentiate yourself from everybody else out there, your plans for scaling through franchising as well as corporate as well. So what does the next 5 years look like for JunkStart?
Yeah, thank you. That's great. Yeah, our goal again is probably gonna take longer than 5, but 10-year goal is to be the largest junk removal brand in the galaxy. And so, over the next 5 years, I certainly hope to kind of see the key markets with about 150 to 175 franchise owners. I want to be sort of, the markets are seeded, like we're probably sold out of most of the territories nationwide. Then after the seeding, it's really about saturating, right? I kind of view it as like this anaconda strategy, like we're going to take time, seed all the right markets, right? Get our arms around everything, and then start squeezing, right, with operational excellence, with the right people in the right markets, like going after, like, hey, now we've got the right people in all these different markets. Like, now how do we get to, the different metrics to go from, like, obviously scaling version 1, 2, 3, getting to where 100 Got Junk is, surpassing them in each local market. And so that's my hope is to do that with a mixture of, I'd love to, keep, corporate franchisees, like, just for the brand is making sure that we're vibrant. We've got the right people in the right markets. I always say, like, I want volunteers, not hostages, and everything in life, right? Like, it needs to be a win-win. So, like, we're looking for folks that want to go out and build a big business, and it's not going to be all fun all the time. But, I say that I'm really excited about getting the right people in the right markets, and then, like, just ripping the cover off the ball. And this first 5 years is going to be key on getting the right people and getting them ramped up quickly, like setting the foundation for that year 5 through 10 sort of onslaught that I foresee coming, just in the marketplace, going out and taking share.
Love it. So if one of our audience members is like, I want to be one of those 150, 175 people he just talked about, how do they reach out to you and your team to inquire more and begin the process of diligence, looking at the FDD and everything else?
Yeah, 100%. JunkStartFranchising.com is an easy first place to go. And you could, fill out some information there, and we'll get to you. LinkedIn, Daniel McCarty, JunkStart, just type that in, you'll find me, or on x.com. Anyway, you just shoot me a message and get you kind of some more information and get you started on the process. It's a mutual evaluation, as you know, Joe. It's got to work for you, for us. Again, vision, values, complementary skill set. We're not the worst thing we could do, right, is try and let the wrong people in the system, and that works both ways, right? Like, be horrible for you, horrible for us. So, like, we are obviously being selective on everyone that joins the system, because we're not bringing in 1,000 people, we're bringing in about 150, 175. So, but yeah, if you think it's something that sounds good to you and you want to learn more, to reach out to any of those channels, it would be easiest.
Fantastic. And if you didn't catch any of those links, just scroll down in the commentary. We'll have the hyperlinks to the LinkedIn, the website, x.com, all the different links, so that you can check out Daniel, JunkStart, reach out to his team, and make a viable decision. Is this the right model for you to be able to leverage franchise as your capability to become an entrepreneur or increase your entrepreneur status? Daniel, this has been fire, bro. Thank you so much for taking time. I know you're super busy running a corporate footprint, scaling a franchise, doing all the stuff that you do. I know you're super busy. Mondays traditionally are super busy on top of that. So thank you for taking time out of your day to come on with me and my audience.
Thanks, Joe. It's been great.
Love it. For everybody out there, here's the key takeaways that I had. You don't win in a crowded market by doing more of the same thing. You win by building a model that is clearly differentiated, operationally sound, and system driven, because differentiation is what gets the real attention. And systems within that is how you create value. Until next time, I'm Joe Carter. This is the Franchise Growth Show. Thank you again to Daniel, and we will see you all on the next episode. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Never slow up, no, I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no, I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up.